All right, we're live again. Check, check. Hello, hello. Are we wanting to work now? Hello. Checking, checking. So far, so good. Checking, checking. So far, so good. Let's give it like a minute. Just make sure we don't start dropping out of nowhere for no reason. Come on, baby. Stay with me. Stay with me, please. I think we're fine. I think we fixed it. Thank the Lord. This is amazing. I'm so glad. I've been stressing for the last little bit trying to figure out what was going on. Audio working? Yes, it is. Fantastic. Oh, we're good. Fantastic. Okay, we're actually live now. Fan-flippin-tastic. This is great. So let's do this. Pop out the chat. And let's open up Safari. Okay. So I do need to open up one thing real quick. So I need to open up I need to open this up. All right. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the live stream. We are finally live after sitting here for a few minutes trying to figure out why nothing was wanting to work. But we have figured it out, and I am going to pull up a couple of other tabs that we need. And we need that. Okay, so I think we have everything. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the live stream. We are finally up and live. We are finally rocking and rolling. Let me just make sure that we are still good. Yes, indeed, we are. Fantastic. I'm so happy. Let's just get everything settled and get ready to get started. So here's the deal. In the 2020 election, I went live every Monday night before Election Day, and we talked about the election. We did an analysis, and we predicted what was going to happen based on polling, data, trends, a bunch of different things that we can look at to give us an idea of what's going to happen in the presidential election. And we're going to do that again this time. It is 4 weeks until Election Day. It is October 7th, 2024. 4 weeks from today will be the Election Day Eve of the 2024 election between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically just look at all of the battleground states, look at all of the swing states, just go off of data analysis and trends and historical trends. And from there, we're going to go ahead and we're going to pick who's probably going to win that state and how we can get to that conclusion. So let's go ahead and get started. I don't want to be here forever tonight. So let's go ahead and get started first by going through and selecting all of these safe states for both candidates. So starting with Vice President Harris, she'll safely carry Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii. She'll also safely carry most of the New England coast, Maryland, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Delaware, Washington, D.C., New Jersey, Connecticut, Vermont, New York, Illinois for President Trump, North and South Dakota, most of Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, South Carolina, West Virginia, and the 1st District of Maine, and Alaska. And so this leaves all states that I want to take a look at, I think, except for Iowa. Let me check. Okay, Iowa is on this list. So all of these states, this is my personal spreadsheet. This is my personal list that I've made. And we're going to fill this out again because it's also going to tie into my, which we're not going to look at this, but this is my master presidential election spreadsheet that I have made. Looks at all 50 states. And this is what I'm using to analyze the election and predict what I think is going to happen. And so the numbers that we fit in on this will translate over into here. So kicking things off, we're going to start with Arizona, and this will kind of walk us through how we're going to analyze this, at least for this. So Arizona, first of all, we need to look at what happened on this day in 2016, and we can do that easily by pulling up the Arizona Trump versus Harris polls, which will be right here. And it's going to take a second to load. Oh, we have it pulled up right here. This is actually not the website that I need. I think I need this one. Yes. Perfect. Okay, so this is the Real Clear Politics polling average for Arizona. So we can see on this day in history, Biden up 3.1, Trump up 0.7 in 2016. So we're going to translate back over to my spreadsheet. So in Arizona, on this day in 2016, Trump was up by 0.7. So here we're going to put 0.7. The actual was Trump up 3.5, so a 2.8 shift. On this day in 2020, Vice President Biden at the time was up by 3.1. He, of course, only ended up winning the state by 0.3. So it ended up being a 2.8 shift in 2020 as well. So it ended up in both on this day in 2016 and in 2020, there was a shift towards Trump of 2.8 from the polling averages to the final result, which gives us a shifted average of 2.8. So an average shift between the two elections of 2.8. On this day, the current Real Clear Politics polling average has Trump up 1.4 over Vice President Harris. And so if we apply that into my spreadsheet, so on this day, average is 1.40. Apply the shifted average, President Trump would be up 4.2, assuming that these trends carry over. So that would put us in the lean column for Arizona based solely off of my spreadsheet. But I want to look at a couple of other things real quick. So right now, if we go to Polymarket, this is the big betting site. You can look and you can see what everybody's betting on certain states to go for and what the betting markets are saying. Arizona, if we zoom in on the state of Arizona, Donald Trump currently up 68%, 67% to 33%. You can see that he has mounted a solid lead over the last couple of weeks rather. His odds have skyrocketed. So that is great for him as well. As we've already talked about in 2020, Vice President Biden, now President Biden, won it by 0.3. And in 2016, President Trump won it by 3.5. Looking and zooming in on Arizona, the big factor is going to be Maricopa County, Arizona. It went for President Trump by 2.8 in 2016, and it went for President Biden by 2.2. So this, as well as, is it Pima County? This and Pima County are going to be the big factors into how Yuma County as well are all going to be important factors into how President Trump does. In 2016, Hillary Clinton only won this by 13.6. He won Yuma by 1.1. And so those both trended towards, this actually got redder, but this trended, Maricopa County is going to be the big bellwether for what happens at the presidential level, we can actually go into this really neat thing thanks to Cook Political Report called the Demographic Swingometer for Cook Political Report. This gives us base value the 2020 election results and you can look at all of these demographics, and you can look at how different things could cause them to change. So if we go to Arizona, you can see how each of these demographics right now in race and education, how they voted in 2020. So we can go in here and make predictions off of this. So here's what's likely going to happen, I think, with Vice President Harris. I think that Vice President Harris is kind of in a similar position to Hillary Clinton, where she's not super popular despite what they try to do. And so she's not going to have, her big thing across the board is that she's not going to have the same appeal as Joe Biden. Joe Biden was middle-class Joe from Pennsylvania, working man, and all of those things helped him to get pretty popular. So Vice President Harris from San Francisco is not going to have a lot of those benefits. And so her big problem is going to be appealing to a bunch of the same people that Joe Biden catered to. While President Trump's also going to benefit massively from the white working class vote. The spread is going to probably, if I was to guess, I think across the board, Vice President number one, I think black turnout's going to be down a little bit. Not a ton. Let's reset these values here. So not a ton, but probably like a couple of percentage points just across the board. But I also do think that President Trump's going to make some gains. And even just off of doing that, he wins Arizona. It's insanely close. But even just messing with that a little bit, turning turnout down, shifting it just 2 points towards President Trump. Same thing here. I mean, I think that President Trump's going to make some more gains among Hispanics. And I think all that's going to do is just further certify it. All of that to be said, it's still going to be very tight. But, I mean, as we can see by my spreadsheet, polls have consistently underestimated Trump in the average. For the actual here ended up being a 2.8 shift. The actual here, even though Joe Biden did win Arizona, ended up being a 2.8 shift. And so if we assume, all of this is assuming that President Trump is going to there's going to be a underestimation of the polls or in favor of President Trump. And so if that is the case, President Trump wins by 0.4. I'll say that that's kind of roughly around where it's going to be. So we can put Arizona in the lean column for President Trump. Moving on to our next state in the spreadsheet, it is going to be the state of Colorado. So Colorado is actually not as much of a swing state anymore as it was. This one is going to be, if we go into the Real Clear Politics polling average, I don't think there's been a ton of polling out of Colorado for us to go off of. There's only been one, and it was back in December. Kamala Harris was up 11. I'll keep this short and sweet because I don't think there's really a lot to talk about with Colorado. In 2020, Joe Biden won Colorado by 13.5. In 2016, there was talk that President Trump might flip Colorado. Hillary Clinton won it by 4.9. Again, she wasn't super unpopular. There's been a massive leftward shift in Colorado, and I think that it's probably going to hold. So I think we're going to kind of not focus on Colorado a ton. It's in the grand scheme of things, it's not one of the. It'll be likely blue. We're gonna hold on to that, and I'm also going to do that, and I'm also going to do this to get us fully accurate. Perfect. Okay, so Arizona, Colorado, first two states off the board. Next state on the spreadsheet is going to be the state of Florida. So Florida is a very interesting case. If you recall, let's go back and let's look at our history. In 2016, President Trump won Florida by 1.2 percentage points. We want to go back a little bit more. Barack Obama won it by not even a point, 0.88. He won it by 2.8 in 2008. So all of that to be said, President Trump won it by 1.2 in 2016, and in 2020 he won it by 3.4. And Florida has had a massive, kind of like how Colorado has had a massive blueward shift, Florida has had a massive rightward shift. Governor Ron DeSantis, if we want to pull this up real quick, he won after winning the governor's race very, very, very closely in 2018. In 2022, Governor DeSantis, he ended up winning, if this will load from Politico, it's going to take a second. He ended up winning by by almost 20 points, in a very massive turnout for Governor DeSantis, and just a clip further cementing the rightward shift in the state of Florida. If we want to look at this, we can go to my, if we want to look at it, we can go to my spreadsheet. If we pull up Florida, talking about President Trump versus Vice President Harris. On this day in 2020, President Biden was up in Florida by 4.5%. So on this day, negative 4.5. And so we'll actually need to update this, or that's 2016. So negative 4.5. So, and then in 2016, on this day, it was Hillary Clinton up 3. So we're going to go in here and need to update this, negative 3.00. And we are going to, I'm actually going to go in and change this to blue because it's important for consistency's sake. So in 2016, on this day in 2016 to the actual result, which again, President Trump won it by 1.2, there was a 4.2 shift towards President Trump. In 2020, there was a 7.8 point shift in towards President Trump from negative 4.5 to an actual 3.3. So the shift average here is 6%. On this day, average is, what is today's Real Clear Politics polling average? So it's still 6 points. We haven't had any new polls out of Florida, but you can see President Trump is dominating in the polling right now in Florida. And so we can assume, now my spreadsheet would say that President Trump would win Florida by 12. I don't think it's going to be that much. I think we're looking at potentially a 5-6 point win for President Trump. Regardless, Florida is going to be likely President Trump. Now remember, either candidate needs 270 votes to win the election outright. And it is very possible that we may not know the results of the election for a little bit, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. Moving on to the next state is the state of Georgia. And this is going to be very interesting because Georgia went for President Trump in 2016 by 5.1 points over Hillary Clinton. But then in 2020, it was one of the closest states in the election and actually ended up going for President Biden by 0.24. So Georgia is a very, very, very close and very important state to watch in the 2024 election. If we look at the current trends right now in the state of Georgia, let's pull it up in Real Clear Politics. The polling average right now has it as President Trump up 1.5. New poll came out, Trump plus 5. Tie, Trump plus 1, Trump plus 2, Kamala Harris plus 3 back in September. We haven't had any polling in October yet, but we can go ahead and go into the spreadsheet and put President Trump right now at a 1.5 for the average. And if we look on this day in 2016, President Trump was up 4.7, which is the same as he was the last time I checked the spreadsheet. And on this day in 2020, President Biden was up 0.3. As of this point, it was actually Trump up there. So we'll need to do negative 0.3. And actual 2020 was this exact result. So there was actually no shift in the current. There was actually no shift as of now. So the shift average is 0.2, which gives us a shifted average of 1.7. So according to my spreadsheet, it would be tilt Republican, tilt President Trump. Still very, 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 very close. However, we're not just going to look at my spreadsheet because my spreadsheet is not solely 100% accurate, not a solely perfect reflection of what we'd be looking at here. So we're going to go into the number one poly market and just look at the betting odds for what people are saying about Georgia and this, what's going to happen. You can see just in general, President Trump up 2.1% from where he was. And right now in Georgia, President Trump with a 64% chance of winning according to the betting markets, which is a very good sign for him. He needs the state of Georgia to win. He has to take Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. Those are very important states. We're not worried about Florida. We're not worried about Ohio. We're not worried about Iowa. He's going to win all of those. And we'll talk about all three of those coming up because they used to be swing states. They're really not anymore. We've already talked about Florida. But all of that to be said, right now in Georgia, according to the betting markets, 64% chance for President Trump. It's been nothing but positive for him there. And now if we go to the demographic swingographer, jump into Georgia. Again, we're looking at a 0.24% change, meaning that not a change in any direction changes this election. So kind of going back to what I talked about, a little earlier in Arizona, I do think that President Trump makes some gains in the African-American vote. Now, he only won 6% of the African-American vote in 2016 or in 2020. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that he wins 8% of the black vote in 2024. This is being really slow and really annoying. Let's say that he wins. Let's just reset to the 2022 or the 2020 results. So let's keep this margin. Let's move Kamala Harris to 91% and bump President Trump up to 8%. That alone not only shifts it a whole point where President Trump wins by a point, not even touching turnout, but it gives President Trump Georgia. That is how tight the election is in Georgia. And we can assume with a lot of the efforts that President Trump has made that he's going to make inroads into the African-American and Hispanic communities. Now, the Hispanic community is not as big of a focal point in Georgia as the African-American community is, especially in the suburbs of Atlanta. But it's still something to focus on. Now, we can also assume maybe that Vice President Harris is going to make some gains in white college graduates, just a little bit, which again makes this super, super tight. Now, if we adjust that, say it's a split like that, Vice President Harris does end up taking Georgia. But we can also assume that there will be a bit of a higher turnout of college-educated whites. Say there's a higher increase. All of this is saying is that there's a myriad of factors that can go into determining Georgia, that can go into determining who wins this race. Well, here's what I think is going to happen in general. I think turnout's going to be high across the board. So we can bump that up, we can bump that up, we can bump all of these up. I think turnout's going to be high. I don't think Kamala Harris wins 93% of the black vote in Georgia, and I think that's going to be crucial. So again, let's just bump that up there and bump this up here. I think that could be, that alone, just the shift in the black vote like that could help Trump. There's a lot of factors. But I definitely don't be shocked if President Trump makes some serious inroads into into African-American and Hispanic communities across the board. Now, all of that to be said, Georgia's going to be incredibly tight. And I do think, with, the Real Clear Politics polling average has Trump off 1.5. It's going to be it's going to be somewhere around there. And I think we're looking at Georgia being tilt Trump when it is all said and done. So right now, Trump is at 183 to Vice President Harris is 191. Next up on the board is going to be the state of Iowa. Again, keep it short and sweet. The state of Iowa historically has been a bellwether state. It has gone, if we just go back to 2000, it has gone for, except in 2000 where it went for Al Gore, It has gone for every president since from 2004 to 2020, or to 2016, because it obviously didn't go for the winner in 2016. Went for Obama in both 2008 and 2012, and went for Trump in 2016. But Iowa, it went for Barack Obama by 5.8 in 2012, and then went for President Trump by 9.4 in 2016, which shocked a lot of people. And then in 2020, by 8.2. Now, Iowa, I don't know if we'll be able to pull up on this day data for Iowa, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on Iowa. I just want to kind of point out what we're going to see. So we don't have any polling out of Iowa, which doesn't help us at all. But Polymarket, the betting odds, Iowa is 93% President Trump. President Trump's going to win Iowa probably by a similar margin. It's going to be likely Trump. Keep it in the column. It's not really a bellwether state anymore, but it was once upon a time, which is the fun part about this whole thing, is seeing how things have shifted and changed since we've in elections, and seeing how everything's changed. It's also late on a Monday night. I am tired, so if I sound a little discombobulated, I apologize, but we're going to try to get through this as best as we can. All right, so next state after Iowa on my spreadsheet is going to be Michigan. Now, this is the first of the quote-unquote blue wall states. That is very important to take a look at. Michigan right here, 15 electoral votes, absolutely crucial for both candidates, very integral to their election chances. Both of them definitely need a win in the state of Michigan. Now, in 2016, President Trump, the first Republican since, I want to say, George Herbert Walker Bush back in 1988, yes, indeed, to win the state of Michigan. I mean, it went for Clinton both years, it went for Al Gore both, and John Kerry, it went for Barack Obama, and then it went for President Trump in 2016. President Trump won Michigan by 0.22%. President Biden then went and won the state of Michigan by 2.8%. So, bit of a change between 2016 and 2020. If we look at on this day polling right now, if we just go to the Real Clear Politics polling average, right now on this day, right now Vice President Harris has a 0.7% lead in the polling average. We see some recent polling: Trump 1, Trump 2, Harris 1. It is tight. It is tight regardless. But right now it's Vice President Harris 4.7. That's actually shifted a little bit since I've been here, since the last time I was I did the spreadsheet, which was a couple of weeks ago. On this day in 2016, Hillary Clinton was actually up 6.8% on this day in 2016. And then on this day in 2020, Vice President Biden, now President Biden, was up by 6.2%. So we're going to go in here real quick and we're going to update this. Doesn't move by much, but President Trump ended up winning. So that was a 7.10 shift in favor of President Trump. And then President Biden only won by 2.8 in 2020. So it was a shift of 3.4, a 5.25 shift average in favor of President Trump. On this day average, you factor that all together, it's a shifted average of 4.55, which is not outside the realm of possibility. It's going to be tilt 1,000%. I don't think it's going to be potentially 4.55. But we can look at right now, even the betting markets have it as a dead heat. Vice President Harris is up by 53.47. It is a dead heat. If we go into the demographic swingographer, you can see what essentially will have to happen for President Trump is, and here's part of it too. You get into the Rust Belt states, you get into the Union states, the blue-collar, white working class vote. I mean, what I would not be shocked by is Vice President Harris not doing great amongst the college-educated or non-college grads and losing some of that vote. And you can see how that flips Pennsylvania or Michigan in favor of President Trump. I mean, again, Detroit, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that we see President Trump make some inroads in the African-American community. Hispanic, Latinos again. But, I mean, again, one thing I do expect as well is a kind of gradual shift in white college grads towards Vice President Harris. And so if we just shift that a little bit, again, super tight. It's going to be super close regardless. What I think is going to happen kind of across the board, regardless of the state, is we're going to see white non-college graduates shift a little bit more to Trump. White college graduates, especially women, shift towards Vice President Harris. And we're going to see subtle shifts in the black and Hispanic towards President Trump. All of which, with how tight everything is, you want to give it to President Trump. With that being said, Michigan, according to my analysis, is going to be tilt. I could have Michigan going either way. It is of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. It is the one of those three states that I think is the most likely to stay blue. But in my predictions right now, just off of the trends and the data, it is most definitely probably going, or I wouldn't say most definitely, it is looking like it could very well go for President Trump or Kamala Harris. All right. Anyway, moving on to the next one, the state of Minnesota. Governor Tim Walz, Kamala Harris's running mate, his home state. Right now, if we just look at trends, Minnesota has been a consistent, we would love to flip it, but we can't, state. It has gone blue since 1972 when Richard Nixon won his massive win. It hasn't flipped to the Republican sense. In 2016, President Trump lost by 1.5% in Minnesota. In 2020, he lost by 7.1. A big shift in favor of President Biden. But if we look at current Minnesota polling, we can take a look because I think there's been some interesting polling that has come out recently. As of right now, just even seeing that, this is interesting. So right now, the Real Clear Politics polling average is only 4.7 for Vice President Harris. So she is kind of smack in the middle of Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden on where they were. If we look at my spreadsheet right now, it's Vice President Harris 4.7. So that's actually a little higher. Oh no, that's not the right one. This has actually gone down since the last time that I was doing the spreadsheet. Bringing that down very much. 2016 Minnesota Real Clear Politics, right there. So if we look at this and look at on this day in history, if we're able to pull that up here, I don't think we'll be able to, but that's fine. Regardless, I'm not going to be able to sit down and do that math specifically. There's consistently been a shift towards Trump because we don't have a lot of data on Minnesota. Negative 1.12 would put it in tilt D. Looking at Polymarket, Minnesota, they have it as a 92% chance of Vice President Harris holding Minnesota. And I'm going to agree with that. Some of these states we're taking a little bit more of a focus on than others. But Minnesota it'll be closely between lean and tilt. But I think with Tim Walz on the ticket, it'll help Kamala. It's going to probably be lean D. Moving on to the next state, not necessarily a battleground state in the classic turn. However, there has been a lot of some interesting polling coming out of the state of New Mexico. Which could be very interesting. Again, I don't expect it to flip for President Trump. It went for Joe Biden by 10 points and Hillary Clinton by 8.2. Last time it went Republican is going to be 2004 with George W. Bush. He won it by 0.79. But it's still worth taking a look at. Right now, in the Real Clear Politics polling average for New Mexico, it is Vice President Harris by 8.5%, based off of most recent polling. Most recent polling has 6, 8, 10, 10. And so it is still very likely blue. If we funnel that information into my spreadsheet, we also skip New Hampshire. That's actually gone down from the last time that I messed with it. But even Polymarket, if we look at Polymarket, it has it at a 92% chance of staying blue. And much like Minnesota, it's going to stay in the, probably, I would put this in likely blue probably, but it is not outside of the realm of possibility that it is closer than we expect, especially if President Trump makes gains among Hispanics like we think, then it is not outside the realm of possibility at all. Okay, next state on the docket is going to be the state of New Hampshire. We accidentally skipped New Hampshire. Looking at the polling averages right now, New Hampshire has been a swing state historically, but it hasn't been as much this cycle. Vice President Harris is up 7.4. And President Biden won it by exactly 7.4 in 2020, and Hillary Clinton only won it by 0.37 in 2016. So again, a big blueward shift. Polymarket right now has it at an 88% chance of Vice President Harris holding New Hampshire. I think that's pretty likely. It's probably going to be by at least a lean margin. So New Hampshire will be likely blue or lean blue. Puts us at 210 to 204 right now, with a bunch of states still outstanding. Moving on to the next state, which is going to be the all-important battleground state of North Carolina. Right now in the Real Clear Politics polling average, and again, North Carolina has been ravaged by Hurricane Helene. Right now in the Real Clear Politics polling average, President Trump is up by 0.6. We've had a ton of polling come out, everything benefiting Trump most recently. Only two polls in the last month that have benefited President Trump, or that have benefited President Harris. So right now, President Trump has actually gone up in the polling average. On this day in 2016, Hillary Clinton was actually up 2.6 on President Trump. So let's turn that blue. So a 6.2 shift in favor of President Trump in 2016. And then on this day in 2020, President Biden was up 1.4. Again, President Trump did win this state in both elections. And so 2.7 shift, that gives us a 4.45 shift average onto this average, puts North Carolina at 5.05%. It's probably going to be closer than that. Polymarket right now does have President Trump with a 40% chance of winning the state of North Carolina. So it's going to be somewhere around that. The question is going to be does Hurricane Helene affect any of that? Looking at the trends, looking at the data would suggest that President Trump will continue to overperform his projections. So I'm going to put North Carolina in lean Republican. And again, President Trump right now cleaning the table, hitting all of the states that he needs to win re-election, or technically re-election, but in 2 consecutive terms. So next up is the state of Nevada. The state of Nevada has gone for Democrat every cycle since, I believe, 2004. So Nevada went for George W. Bush by 2.6, has gone Democrat ever since. President Trump in 2016 lost by 2.4, and in 2020 he lost by 2.4 as well. But Nevada has been a state that they have been really pushing for and really hoping that they could potentially flip. And looking at Polymarket, it is a dead heat. Right now, 52-48 in favor of Vice President Harris. Looking at the current Real Clear Politics polling average, we see that Vice President Harris has a 1.1% lead over President Trump, has a negative 1.1% lead over President Trump. You can see the most recent batch of polling has definitely helped Vice President Harris. On this day in 2016, Hillary Clinton was up 1.2 percentage points. So if we factor that into our spreadsheet here, that messes with the math a little bit, but And then on this day in 2020, Vice President Biden was still up 6 points. So that actually becomes 6.00. And so looking all together, it's a 1.75 point shift in favor, or no, that is the wrong state. So all of this stays the same. It ends up being a 1.10 shift. So all of this would suggest that Vice President Harris will win the state of Nevada. Historic trends and data would support that as well. If we go in here, going into the swingometer, again, going off of what I've said, we can assume that President Trump will make some gains. We'll lose some in white college grads as well. We'll make a little bit of inroads into the African American community, and I think makes some decent gains in Hispanics. But all of that in this instance, it would be super close. It would be super tight. He would actually win the all-important, or he would actually still lose Clark County, but it would be so tight. Like any change in one direction or another, it's 1,000 vote difference in this state. And so anything in Nevada is going to change it. But I think that kind of the pessimistic part of me thinks that Kamala Harris does win Nevada. Nevada is going to keep being the state that is so close, but just not quite. But I think it'll definitely flip Republicans sooner rather than later. Next is going to be Ohio. The state of Ohio has been a bellwether for a very, very long time, I think. Ohio was actually, in 2020, was the first time in a long time that Ohio hasn't gone for the winner of the election. Usually it does. President Trump won it by 8.1 points in 2016. Barack Obama won it by 3 in 2012, and he won it by 4.6 in 2008. George W. Bush, of course, won it in both years as well. President Trump won it by 8 points in 2016 or in 2020, and he is on track to run that or have it slightly better. But if we look at 2024 Ohio right now, current RCP polling average has President Trump up 8 points in the state of Ohio. So going here, this is actually down a hair from where it was. On this day in 2016, President Trump was only up 1.2 points. And he ended up winning it by 8 points. And then on this day in 2020, President Biden was up by 0.6, so negative 0.6. So all of that shifts to about a 7.85 shift average on top of the current average. Has President Trump winning Ohio by 15.85 points? I don't think that's fully correct. It's going to probably be somewhere between 8 to 10. But it is, Polymarket saying Ohio, President Trump has a 92% chance of winning Ohio. And so Ohio will be safe Republican. And that puts us at 237. President Trump is at this point very close to winning re-election. I'll highlight these real quick. So Nebraska and Maine are the two states that allocate their electoral votes based on congressional districts. We won't dive too deep into it here because we're still 4 weeks out. I believe that Nebraska's 2nd congressional district will go to President Trump, Maine at large, or Vice President Harris. Same with Maine's at-large district as well. 2 electoral votes. Those 2 electoral votes could prove very, very important, but I don't think in the grand scheme of things it's going to make a ton of difference. Moving on to actually, I'm going to save Pennsylvania for last because Pennsylvania is probably the most important, probably going to be the tightest state in the election, and we're down to 4. So we're coming up next on the great state of Texas, a Republican stronghold, hasn't voted Democrat since 1976 with Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was the last Democrat to hold the state of Texas back when it was only 26 electoral votes. Now, of course, it's 38 electoral votes. President Trump won it in 2016 by 9 points, won it in 2020 by 5.6. It's probably going to be somewhere in the middle of that in 2024. Looking at the current Real Clear Politics polling average, it is President Trump up about 5 points, 5.2, 5, 6, 5, 5. And we don't have a ton of on this day polling, which is fine. Looking at Polymarket has Texas at 90% chance of President Trump holding the state of Texas. And that tells us all we need to know. It's going to be lean Republican when it's all said and done. But 40 electoral votes, that puts President Trump over the top. Gets him that 270. Jumping into the final 3 states, next is the state of Virginia. Virginia is interesting because the last time it went Republican was 2004 for President Bush. 2016, Hillary won it by 5.3. 2020, President Biden won it by 10. Now, so if we go to current polling in Virginia, Virginia would not necessarily be considered a swing state. But current polling has President Harris up 6.4. A new poll has Harris up 11, 8.328. So there's been a little bit of interesting polling out of Virginia. However, early voting has showed us some very interesting statistics. If we go to Virginia early vote, data. Let's pull this up really quick. So we can already see, and this is going to be an interesting trend as well, is that there's going to be a massive decrease in the amount of mail-in ballots and the amount of people requesting mail-in ballots, which is very, very interesting. We're seeing right now a decrease in early voting as well, which is going to kind of go across as well. All of this to say, Polymarket has Virginia at 87% chance for VP Harris. It's gonna be in that lean category probably. It's not gonna be likely like in 2020. It'll be lean. Taking us to Wisconsin, the final 2 states in this prediction. If we go to the state of Wisconsin, right now, the current Real Clear Politics polling average has Kamala Harris up by 0.8%. If we plug it into our spreadsheet right now, negative 0.8. That's actually fairly in line. On this day in 2016, Hillary Clinton was up 5.7. If you remember your history, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania weren't even considered swing states. President Biden was up by 5.5. Neither of these states were. Wisconsin was not considered a swing state. And President Trump ended up winning it by 0.7%. If we go back here, he won it by 0.76, and then in 2020, President Biden won it by 0.63. So Wisconsin, all 3 of these Rust Belt states are going to be very, very tight, no matter how you slice it. Looking at our trends, it shifted towards President Trump by 6.4% in 2016, and it shifted towards President Trump from the polling average by 4.8%. So a 5.6 shift altogether from this day. We're looking at President Trump by 4.8 if this holds. Again, I don't think it holds by that much. I think we're looking at probably another tilt Wisconsin. But again, it doesn't matter how much you win it by as long as you win it. And going to Polymarket is also a dead heat, 53-47 for VP Harris. It's going to be incredibly, incredibly tight. Moving on to the final state and probably the hardest state to predict in this election, it is the state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania went for President Biden in 2020 by 1.2 percentage points, and in 2016 went for President Trump by 0.72%. So very, very, very tight. Poly Market right now has it at 56.44 for President Trump. He's had some good polls come out of the state of Pennsylvania. Of course, a lot of history for President Trump. The Real Clear Politics average has it basically as a tie. It is, you can see all of these. This is as much of a dead heat as you can get. It's a straight tie up and down the middle. No other way to slice it through the 29th, which is the most recent polling. It is going to be incredibly, incredibly tight. If we plug this into my spreadsheet, so shift this on this day average to 0, and make this white since it's 0. On this day in history, Hillary Clinton was up by 7.5%. Again, not considered a swing state in 2016. President Biden was up by 7.1% as well. He did end up, of course, winning the state. But 7.5%, an 8.2% shift towards President Trump, and then from negative 7.1 to negative 1.2, a 5.9% shift for President Trump. A 7.5 shift altogether, which would imply that we have a 7.5% lead for President Trump. Again, I don't think it's going to be that much. It's going to be probably within the half a point to 2 points, probably, maybe 3, if we get really ambitious. Centre County is going to be the big bellweather county, but again, Pennsylvania, a lot of Union voters. It's pretty safe to assume probably that we can shift this over a little bit, and just doing that alone is enough to flip Pennsylvania for President Trump. Then again, remember my assumption that VP Harris is going to lose some college-educated voters or gain some white college graduates. Again, that flips it back towards her. But remember, I also think we can say probably about a 3%. If President Trump gets a 3% shift in the African American vote, we're looking at him winning the state of Pennsylvania. It's going to be, Pennsylvania is going to be incredibly, incredibly tight. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I do think right now we can look and probably say that President Trump wins, which I think gives us exactly this gives us his 2016 victory. Now it would be cool if he could manage to flip like a Minnesota or Nevada. But the reality is I'm trying to be somewhat pessimistic, just kind of realistic. And this is, I mean, if I was being super realistic, I would probably say that. But the Rust Belt states do vote in line with each other. So I think this is a pretty likely scenario. It's going to be tight regardless. So as of right now, I do have President Trump winning 306 to 202, 4 weeks out from Election Day. Kind of recapping the big points. Polls consistently underperform underguess President Trump, or underestimate. So the question is going to be whether or not that happens again, and if it does, to what degree. President Trump is going to make gains in white non-college educated voters, which is one of his strengths. The union vote, all of that. President Biden being not on the ticket is going to help out a ton with that. Union Joe, a big union guy, but President Trump's going to make some more gains in that. VP Harris is going to make some gains in white college educated voters, especially women. There's going to be a big gender gap. A lot of polling suggests that men will voting for Trump, while women like voting for Kamala. And then Trump's going to make gains in minority communities, African American, Hispanic. So the question is just going to be how much that actually affects the election. And regardless, we're going to be in for a very, very, very late night on November 5th. Make sure you get out and vote. Make sure that you're registered and all of that. And I will see you all next week with 3 weeks out, the election analysis. Talk to you guys soon. Have a good one.